The Biden administration, which declared the Chinese Communist Party is still the biggest enemy of the United States, is receiving huge attention as it shows Taiwan is threatened by CCP recently. Biden ostensibly criticized Xi Jinping and pretended to attack the CCP, but the reality was revealed after Lianghui, the China's largest political event, which opened on March 4. This meeting was the beginning of the political schedule for Xi Jinping to be a general secretary of CCP for 3 consecutive terms, and ahead of this, China banned the import of pineapples from Taiwan entirely because of the detection of harmful organisms. In fact, according to a report by the South China Morning Post, harmful organisms were found in 13 of the 6,200 pineapple which exported from Taiwan between March and May of 2020. But since October last year, when Taiwan tightened its export quarantine standards, there have been no cases of harmful organisms found. That's why Taiwan's position is that China suddenly decided to ban Taiwan from importing pineapples on March 1st because of a pure political purpose. China aimed at the southern part of Taiwan, the main producer of pineapples, because these areas are the base of support for Taiwan's ruling Democratic Progressive Party. It is also the same dirty trick as banning soybean imports to pressure President Trump, who was supported by US farmers in the past. Taiwan's Taipei Times also reported, China is trying to reverse public opinion in southern Taiwan and put pressure on the Progressive Democratic Party by restricting the sale of pineapples, which are the main source of income for farmers in southern Taiwan. Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen also immediately said, since last year, 99.79% of the Taiwanese pineapples exported to China have passed the custom tests, and criticized China's unreasonable policies. On February 27, the Democratic Progressive Party officials, including Tsai Ing-wen, Vice President and Prime Minister, visited a pineapple farm in Kaohsiung, southern Taiwan, to encourage farmers not to give up and started a campaign. To support the farmers, let's all eat pineapple together. In addition to the economic retaliation from the pineapple, Xi Jinping has threatened Taiwan by mobilizing army, naval, and air forces from the Nanjing military region to conduct coastal drills against Taiwan in the South China Sea. However, despite the threat posed by Xi Jinping, Taiwan is not backing down. Civic groups, companies, and politicians from ruling and opposition parties in Taiwan have launched a pineapple consumption campaign. In just 4 days after China's sanction, Taiwan sold as many pineapples as last year's total export to China. This pineapple campaign also received international support. Brent Christensen, U.S. diplomat who currently serves as director of the American Institute in Taiwan, assisted Taiwan by uploading a photo of 3 pineapples on his desk. The Canadian Trade Bureau in Taiwan also posted a picture of a pineapple pizza on SNS and said, "We like pizza with pineapple, especially Taiwanese pineapple." Japan also supported Taiwan by importing 5,000 tons of pineapples. Also by the announcement for supporting Taiwan, but this didn't get much support from the people. On March 3rd, Biden announced that he would continue to support Taiwan, saying so with interim national security strategy guidance. He said like this, "We will support Taiwan, a leading democracy and an economic and security partner. The most effective way for the U.S. to outcompete China in the long term is to invest in its people, economy, and democracy." But at a time when Taiwan is facing practical difficulties such as China's economic pressures and military threats, the Biden government has not said a word about precisely this misery, and this made Taiwan worried. It is completely the opposite of the Trump administration, which has criticized every China's unreasonable policies toward Taiwan. The same goes for the other countries that have participated in Trump's anti-China alliance. Biden has only verbally criticized China for the situation with Australia, which has been under China's trade retaliation for demanding an investigation into the origin of the Wuhan pneumonia last year. So far, Biden has not given a statement to any concrete measures which are taken to deal with the situation between Australia and China. In addition, last month Biden signed an executive order to review the U.S. semiconductor supply chain, and announced that he would work with allies to isolate China, but the reality is different. SMIC, the number one Chinese semiconductor company blacklisted due to Trump's severe sanctions, signed a $1.2 billion supply deal with Dutch semiconductor equipment company ASML on March 3rd. In 2019, the Trump administration put direct pressure on Dutch government to prevent ASML from supplying quality equipment to SMIC. However, when ASML signed a contract with SMIC, which remains under U.S. sanctions, analysts say the U.S.-led sanctions against the Chinese companies are losing power. In addition, recently, the U.S. government reportedly granted several export permits for its semiconductor equipment and materials companies to supply products to SMIC. Also, Chinese media reported, good news for SMIC, Biden removed the Trump-led sanctions, and that SMIC has received U.S. permission to import some semiconductor devices from U.S. companies. Even though the U.S. only lifted a ban on processors over 14nm chips, Chinese media reported already now that this is the beginning of the better relationship between the U.S. and China for the whole world. They also explained the background of this. The U.S. has taken such steps to address the global shortage of semiconductor supply and demand. China's media welcomed Biden's decision and said, one U.S. company has been allowed to provide process equipment to SMIC, and two more are currently under review. For these reasons, analysts say Joe Biden's administration is slowly easing sanctions against Chinese companies. Meanwhile, there were some shocking arguments in the U.S. Do not rely too much on Taiwan's semiconductors. Taiwan could soon be united with China. On March 1st, the National Security Commission for AI warned that China could soon replace the U.S. as the world's AI superpower, saying that it faces serious military repercussions. In the commission, the former Google CEO Eric Schmidt expressed concerns about America's loss of control in the field of ultra-small electronics and also mentioned Taiwan. We should create a flexible base in the U.S. to design and manufacture semiconductors, taking into account the risk that Taiwan may be absorbed to China. Even former Assistant Secretary of Defense Bob Work said, dependence on Taiwan's semiconductor is dangerous. In a situation where China is a threat to Taiwan, our competitiveness will become a problem if China takes Taiwan. For now, Taiwan's most efficient means of confronting China is semiconductors. However, in this situation, there is a claim that the U.S. should reduce dependence on Taiwan's semiconductors and that Taiwan can be absorbed or run by China, so Taiwan's fear is bound to grow. On the surface, Biden appears to be supportive of Taiwan, but his earlier remarks only made Taiwan more concerned. In fact, Biden was criticized last month for accepting China as only cultural difference, despite its inhuman treatment to the Uyghurs, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and the One China policy. In addition, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said in the foreign policy speech on March 3rd, "We will not promote democracy by trying to overthrow the authoritarian regime with costly military intervention or violence." The U.S. had tried this tactic in the past, but despite its good intentions, it didn't work and we would act differently from now on. But some interjected that a change in the strategy of the U.S. would undermine the world's pressure as an international community on dictatorships or authoritarian regimes for their atrocities and human rights issues. Even more shocking is the case of Jake Sullivan, Hillary's former political advisor. During Obama's time, Jake proposed handing Taiwan over to China to write off the U.S. debt, and Hillary said, "I saw it and thought it was so clever." Of course, this case was actively reported by the Chinese media at the time, and the Jake Sullivan who made the remarks in question was appointed as National Security Advisor by Biden in 2021. As the problematic remarks about Taiwan by the U.S. President, Secretary of State, and National Security Advisor continued to arise, Taiwan was shocked. Lin Yufang, politician and a former chairman of the legislature Wian, expressed great concern about the position of the Biden government, saying, "From now on, Taiwan must focus more than anything on the friction with China to reduce. There is no other way for Taiwan to stave off the CCP's attack than with the support of the international community, including the US. But for now, it doesn't look like the current Biden administration is getting actively involved in international affairs. What will happen to Taiwan in the future? What do you think of this video? Thanks for watching, comments, likes, and sharing. Be safe.